The phone vibrated at 3:19 a.m. Not rang, vibrated. A short, controlled pulse against the wood of the bedside table, deliberate, measured, patient. In the absolute quiet of the Ouagadougou night, the sound was a violation, a tiny, insistent tremor in the dark. President Ibrahim Traoré did not reach for it immediately. He had learned, through coups and midnight plots, that nothing which came before dawn was ever good news. He lay still, the thin sheet over him, listening. He counted the seconds between each muted buzz. 1, 2, 3. A steady, metronomic rhythm. There was no urgency in it. That fact alone narrowed the list of possibilities down to a frightening few. This was not a panicked guard, not a flustered minister, not the chaotic stammer of a crisis report. This was a summons from someone who knew he would be awake and who expected to be answered. On the third pulse, his hand moved. The device was cool in his palm. Yes, the voice on the line offered no greeting. It did not ask how he was. It spoke as if resuming a dialogue already in progress, its tone flat, devoid of static or background noise, a voice engineered for clarity alone. "You changed the convoy route last Thursday," it stated calmly. "Not the official itinerary. The secondary road through the scrubland, the one your own security chief argued against." Traoré's eyes opened fully in the darkness. The detail was lethally precise. A decision made in a private briefing within a sealed room. The voice continued, methodical. "You were right to ignore him. The bridge near Kudugu, its central piers are sheared. It cannot carry armored weight anymore. A fact known to local engineers, but not yet to your logistics maps." A deliberate pause, allowing the implication to settle like dust. Then, softer, almost conversational, "You should replace him." Traoré sat up slowly, his bare feet meeting the cool floor. The air in the room felt thin. This was not a threat. A threat has edges, demands, a source you can locate. This was something far more profound and unsettling. A demonstration. A flawless exhibition of knowledge, reach, and silent oversight. The caller was not warning him of a vulnerability. They were proving they had already seen it, and by extension could see everything. The call was not about the bridge, or the route, or the security chief. It was a single, stark message. You are being watched by eyes you do not have. And for now, those eyes are blinking back. The voice did not raise itself. It did not rush. It recited details with the precision of an audited dry, dispassionate inventory of a life presumed secret. It named a forgotten village in the Sahel where Captain Traoré, not President Traoré, had once hidden for 3 days after an ambush. It cited a tactical radio call sign. Redstone, retired the year before the coup. It referenced a meeting held in the storeroom of a shuttered bakery, a gathering of 5 men, decided without minutes, without cameras, without a single witness beyond themselves. This was not intelligence gathered from gossip or intercepted chatter. This was different. This had the cold, fixed quality of records, of archived truth. A chill crept up his spine, settling at the base of his skull. It was not the fear of death. He had made his peace with that specter long ago, in the trembling heat of a military vehicle, staring down a barrel. This was something subtler, more corrosive, the fear of being known, not the public figure, the man in the uniform giving speeches, but the hidden self, the doubts, the old loyalties, the unguarded moments. To be fully seen was to be disarmed. "You will answer only yes or no unless instructed otherwise," the voice stated, its tone never deviating from that calm, neutral frequency. "This is not a discussion." The president breathed out slowly, a controlled stream of air through his nose. The pre-dawn darkness in his bedroom felt suddenly material, a thick veil between him and a world he realized he no longer understood. "Who are you?" he asked, breaking the rule immediately. The question was met not with anger, but with pure, dismissive silence. It was as if he had spoken a word in a language the line did not recognize. "Do you still keep the notebook from your first months in Bauer?" the voice asked instead, pivoting seamlessly. "The black leather one." The one you never let leave your office safe. The one with the broken clasp. Traoré's jaw tightened. A muscle fluttered in his cheek. That notebook was not official policy. It was the antithesis of it. It was raw, unfiltered, scrawled in moments of sheer exhaustion. It contained his private fury at the cynics in his cabinet, his despair over impossible choices, his handwritten promises to a people he feared he would fail. It held the name of a man he had vowed, in absolute secrecy, to bring to justice. It was his confessional. Yes, he said, the word tight. Silence stretched, thin and sharp as a wire. Then the next question, delivered with the same even cadence, would you destroy it if instability required it? Traoré understood the game now. This was not about paper and ink, it was a test of sovereignty. The question was, would he erase his own private truth if an external force commanded it? To say yes was to admit his core was negotiable. To say no was to defy the unseen authority on the line. No, he replied, his voice low but clear. The voice did not argue. It did not warn. It simply recited, verbatim, a single sentence from the middle of the notebook's 7th page. A sentence written in a frantic, sleep-deprived hand over a year ago. A sentence of pure, unvarnished fear and determination that he had never spoken aloud to another living soul. The president closed his eyes. The darkness behind his lids was no escape. In that moment he felt a violation more intimate than any physical breach. Someone had not just entered his safe. They had walked through the quiet rooms of his past and read the inscriptions on the walls. A line existed between the leader and the man, and that line had not just been crossed, it had been erased. Do you believe you are alone right now? The voice asked, the question hanging in the still, dark air. Yes. A correction followed immediately, not as a challenge, but as a simple statement of observable fact. The curtain by the east window is not fully closed, a gap of precisely 2 centimeters. The cord for the flagpole outside is tapping lightly against the metal steady, soft click you have not noticed until now. Your left hand is gripping the phone harder than your right. Your knuckles, even in this dark, are pale. The room did not just feel smaller, it felt staged. It was no longer his sanctuary, but a diorama being observed from an unseen angle. This was no longer a recitation of archived secrets of history unearthed. This was presence, a live, intimate violation of the present moment. They were not just in his past. They were in the very air of his bedroom, noting details too trivial for any report. Yet together they formed an undeniable, terrifying proof. We are here, now, watching. Listen carefully, the voice said, and for the first time Traoré detected a faint undercurrent, not of emotion, but of purpose. You speak often about sovereignty, about rewriting history, about standing independent before the world. A pause, not for effect, but for precision. We do not oppose those words. In fact, they are useful. What we do is manage their consequences. The president said nothing. The words settled into him, cold and heavy. It was a philosophy of power laid bare. They were not the classic puppeteers pulling public strings. They were the editors of reality, the guarantors of a manageable narrative. They allowed the speech, but curated the outcome. By sunrise, the voice continued, its tone shifting to that of a logistics officer confirming a delivery. Your official schedule will reflect a high-level security consultation at 11 a.m. You did not request it. Your chief of staff will believe you did. Your allies will welcome it as a sign of prudent statesmanship. Your critics will say it proves you are finally listening to reason. Your people will be told, through appropriate channels, that it is a necessary step for stability. And if I refuse? The president asked, his own voice sounding distant to him, a scripted line in a play whose ending was already printed. The response was not a threat of violence, of exposure, of coup. It was something more dismantling. You won't, the voice replied gently, almost kindly. The system around you, your aides, your calendar, the expectations of your cabinet, The prepared briefing notes, already on their way to your office, will make the decision feel inevitable. It will feel like your own idea. To refuse would require you to dismantle the very machinery of your own presidency, and you cannot govern without it. The line went dead. This time the silence was absolute. The flag rope continued its faint, metallic tap-tap against the pole. He looked at the 2 centimeter gap in the curtain, a sliver of deeper darkness. They were not ordering him. They were not even compelling him. They were simply adjusting the world, minute by minute, so that his only rational sovereign choice would be the one they had already authored. The call had not changed a policy. It had changed the fabric of his reality. Proving his sovereignty itself was a consequence they had agreed to manage. President Traoré stared at the text. The language was flawlessly official, the correct bureaucratic syntax, the proper authorization codes in the header, the formal tone used by his chief of staff. He had confirmed nothing. He had spoken to no one. Yet the machinery of his presidency had just engaged, processing a directive he did not give, and producing an immutable fact. Reality had already begun to move without him. This, he understood with a sinking clarity, was the true demonstration. It was not a show of raw force, not soldiers at the gates, not gunfire in the streets. Those were events, and events could be met, could be fought, could be spun into legend or martyrdom. This was different. This was the quiet, inexorable force of administration. It was paperwork and protocols, calendars and confirmations. It was the system itself, bending to a will that had seamlessly inserted itself into the bloodstream of his authority. To oppose it would mean declaring his own administration in error, fracturing the very structure he needed to rule. He did not wake his staff to demand an explanation. He did not call his generals to test their loyalty. Noise was what the trap wanted, a frantic, visible reaction that would legitimize the emergency and cast him as volatile, unstable. Instead, he moved with a deliberate, silent slowness. He stood, the cool tile of the floor beneath his feet, a tangible anchor. He walked to the basin, turned the tap, and splashed cold water on his face. The shock was bracing, a minor reclaiming of his own senses. He looked at himself in the mirror. The man staring back did not look afraid. Fear had a heat to it. This was colder. His eyes held the focused, still alertness of prey that has just heard the snap of a twig in a forest it thought was empty. He looked hunted. The realization was a humiliation all its own. Returning to his desk, he opened the locked drawer. The black leather notebook was still there, a silent witness to a self he had believed was inviolate. He lifted it out, feeling its absurd, disproportionate weight in his hands. It was just paper, thread, and ink. Yet it contained the last unedited version of Ibrahim Traoré. He could burn it. A small, defiant act of destruction. A token compliance with the ghost on the phone. He could comply fully, walk into the dawn meeting, and perform the role that was being written for him. He did neither. Reaction was surrender. It meant accepting the terms, the tempo, and the battlefield chosen by his unseen counterpart. To destroy the notebook would be to admit its power and theirs. To comply silently was to begin his own erasure. He placed the notebook back in the drawer, locked it, and pocketed the small key. The action was meaningless in the face of their reach, but it was his action, performed in a silence they monitored but could not directly command. He would attend the meeting, but he would do so having made a silent, negligible choice. It was not a strategy for victory. It was the preservation of a spark, a declaration that while they could manage consequences, they did not yet own the source. For now, that had to be enough. The first hint of dawn was a gray smear at the 2 centimeter gap in the curtains. By 5:10 am, the capital began to stir with a specific, orchestrated energy. Beacons moved through the dim pre-dawn light. Not a frenzy, but a deliberate, converging flow. He watched the live security feed in his study, a silent spectator to his own schedule. They were not his orders. Foreign diplomatic plates, clean and polished, appeared near the proposed meeting site. Media vans, usually sluggish at this hour, idled quietly on adjacent streets, as if summoned by some silent frequency. Then, the final piece, one specific official government car, a black sedan with darkened windows, a vehicle whose engine should never turn over without his direct, verbal command, rolled smoothly into a reserved position at the main gate. The meeting was becoming real. It was being built around him, brick by bureaucratic brick, each element lending it legitimacy. The trap was now visible in its elegant two-pronged design. Artant and his presence would sanctify the process, capturing his legitimacy for their ends. Refuse, and his absence would be framed as reckless obstruction, justifying a declaration of instability. So he chose something else. A third path, carved with the very tools they were using. He picked up a different phone, the direct line to the palace guard commander. His instruction was calm, clear, and utterly procedural. No raised voice, no accusation. The unauthorized vehicle was to be stopped politely, of course, for a routine, random security inspection, a matter of protocol. There was no force, no drama, just two uniformed officers approaching, saluting, and respectfully requesting the driver's documents and the vehicle's manifest. The folder from the back seat was retrieved, logged, and brought to him. Alone in his study, as the first true light of dawn bled into the sky, he opened it. Inside were not attack plans but agreements, draft accords layered with advisory clauses and frameworks for international security support. The language was soft, diplomatic, and impeccably reasonable. It spoke of capacity building, joint oversight, and mutually assured stability. It was the kind of document that would generate approving nods in foreign capitals and weary relief from overworked aides. But its effect was a slow, legalistic transfusion of sovereignty. It would embed external advisors into his command structure, create joint committees with veto power, and quietly transfer operational control of key assets. The chill in the room was no longer from the air conditioning. The 3017 AM call, the demonstrations of knowledge, the orchestrated dawn, none of it had been the true objective. They were merely the pressure, the psychological priming. This had never been about a phone call. It had always been about a signature on the last page. His signature, the final legitimizing flourish that would willingly surrender, in polished prose, everything he claimed to defend. They hadn't wanted to overthrow him. They wanted to inhabit him. The phone did not ring again that morning. That silence was not relief. It was recalibration. Traoré felt it in the air, taut, waiting stillness. The unseen pressure had not lifted. It had simply shifted its weight, searching for a new point of leverage. He gathered a small circle in the map room, 4 faces he trusted as much as one could. No devices, no recorded lines, no aides present. Someone can issue orders in my name, he stated, his voice flat. And the system obeys. It is not corrupt, it is efficient. That is the vulnerability. No accusations, only facts. Trace everything tied to that dawn meeting. Every confirmation code, every digital signature, every routing slip. Follow the permissions, not the people. Slowly. Quietly. He leaned back, the first faint light etching the lines of his face. The exhaustion was there, but beneath it ran a cold, clarifying current. They wanted me tired, he said, isolated, rushed into a decision that felt inevitable, a pause as the implications settled over the room. They failed. Outside, the sun climbed. The capital stirred, unaware of how close sovereignty had come to being signed away in a flood of polite, predatory paperwork. The president's eyes drifted to the clock. 3:12:19 would never be just a time again. It was now a coordinate the moment the war changed. Power no longer announced itself with convoys or coups. It arrived in calendar invites, in clauses, in vibrations in the dark. And he knew with absolute certainty that when the next call came, he would not be answering to survive. He would be answering to hunt.